Hey, what's up, guys? JB here. Just getting back into the swing of things here after a busy holiday season. I really hope that everyone out there had a great one. And we're going to kick off 2023 here today with another unit from the latest installment over on the Japanese side of Another Story. But this one is not going to be a Warriors the Crystal, but this one is instead an Apostle of the Void. Now, I don't know exactly how they're going to plan to translate her name just yet, but I'm going to go with Lisol, spelled with an I. Of course, though, that is always subject to change, once they bring it here. And she is set to be the latest 100 cost unit to join the Wind Elements. Now, with so many great units, within that element, and with Job Vision cards, in the midst of a slow rollout, is she going to be powerful enough to make a compelling case to kind of join your Wind starting lineup? Well, let's dive in and let's see what she can do. Now, as mentioned, Lisol is a 100 cost Wind unit. She has a base 3-2 movement, and she can wear hats and cloth. Now, looking at her TMR, this one is an accessory, and the base stats, I think, are pretty nice. So they're coming in with a very high HP and defense value here for an accessory, as well as 5 agility. That's definitely one of the most coveted stats, I'd say, from that slot. Now, the effect itself, I do think is pretty good as well. It is a self buff with 2 casts, and it's going to provide 25% agility and 15% area resist for 3 turns. So I do think that that is a pretty useful combination of effects. Now, moving down into her stats, the HP and attack here are looking pretty solid for her innate values. Her base attack, though, I'd say isn't really all that spectacular, but she is going to make up for that, between her board and mastery. Her dex is pretty middling here, and even a bit less when the board is factored in. Her luck, however, I'd say is definitely one of the strengths for this unit. She's coming in at a 265 innate value, which is among the top 25 in the game as of today. As you can see here across the graphs, the stats are all at a very nice starting value, and that's going to include agility, where she's going to come in at 67 innate. But she does have a passive as well, which, actually will have her among the top 20 fastest units in the entirety of the game, once those passives are factored in. Now, her starting evade total here is definitely riding high on that innate luck and agility value, and that can actually make her a moderately evasive unit, I'd say on a similar plane here as a Bold Leela or a Joker. Now, one thing definitely jumping off the page here is that innate accuracy, and she's coming in with an incredible 210 value. And that is actually going to be including a passive ability that she has, as well as the 140 level mastery that she is going to pick up. And we'll actually look at those here in a few minutes. And that value is actually going to have her among the top 5 most accurate units in the game. Now, shifting up here to her mastery ability, and she's getting that 10 area resist, which I'd say this is fairly common that they're handing that one out these days. And then she's actually picking up 10% attack there as well, which was factored into that innate value that we were just looking at below. Now, defensively, she is going to have 0 defense and 0 spirit. We do have some nice resistances though, 20 to slash, 15 to missile, 10 to magic, and she's going to be neutral to strike. So that's going to make her only weakness here to pierce damage. It is at just a -5 though, which I'd say is fairly easy to work around that and even build that up, if you were to focus on it. Now, in terms of the ailment resistances here, she's actually lined up fairly nicely to work against dark teams and even fire teams as well. And that's going to be a combination of blind, which is nice for the Bold Leela or Yuffie matchups. She's going to have Toad for the Halloween Lucia matchup, and even a bit of stop resist here for a Dark Fina matchup as well. Now, looking at the stats kind of as a whole here and kind of summing them up, I'd say we're definitely looking at a sharpshooter, kind of an evade hunter archetype, with a little bit of bulk there added in for good measure. Now, just to take a quick look at what's in store for this unit with the 140 Awakening, and of course that's going to be available upon her release. She's going to be tagged as a frontline physical attacker, so we are looking at the max possible attack value that she can pick up there at 180, and then she's going to have that moderate HP there at her max potential reincarnation. Now, the mastery ability here that she's getting is going to be 15 initial AP, and then that 15 accuracy that we were just talking about, which does get her up to that 210 innate value. Now, in addition, she is going to be picking up an upgrade to her Job 25 ability, and it is adding a post-damage general dispel effect. Now, her Job 25 skill is a very nice ability to begin with, and this is just going to make it even better. Dispel, remains one of the key pieces of utility to have in your arsenal for really any and all PvP teams in the game. Now looking now at her passive abilities and counters, she has an amazing passive from her all-new unique job, and this one is going to give 12% agility and 40 defense penetration, and then it's going to add 25 accuracy there on top. So 3 very nice effects here. Never take this one off, it's quite amazing. Now adding to that, you do have several options here. You can make her a bit more mobile and give her that +1 move and jump, or you can just lean more into that attack or HP and kind of make her a bit more bulky. I think in most cases I would probably go with option 5 here. She does have a decent base crit to build off of, and this passive will actually move her into a fairly reliable state, if you do enhance that further within your build. She does have some other nice options here though, if you did want to lean a bit more into either strike or pierce damage to kind of help support some of her sub-jobs here that she has available to her. Now in terms of her counter abilities, she does have an all-new one here from her unique job. This one is going to get a 30% proc chance. It doesn't actually do any damage, but instead it will debuff the target's agility by 20%. And that's also going to increase her area resistance there by 15% on top. So this one is pretty decent. I do kind of like this one. The agility debuff though, may be a little bit redundant, depending on who else you might have in your party. But, the area resist there I think is pretty much always going to be useful. And her other counters, aren't really super compelling. They are coming from the outdated Monk and Lancer jobs. They are very limited in their range. So I do think that I would roll with this unique one here at pretty much all times. All right, guys, let's start digging into her main kit, and we're going to start first here with her buffs. Buff 1 is going to provide her Protect and Shell. And while those effects are active, she's going to consume 33% less AP. So pretty nice overall buff here. I always like Protect and Shell. I'd say these effects, along with her nice damage resistances and HP value, you can effectively build her here to counter either physical or magical teams, in my opinion. The AP reduction there is a pretty nice cherry on top. There are a lot more Protect and Shell removal skills in the game. So, I wouldn't necessarily count on this lasting the full 3 turns. I'd say the one silver lining here with this buff, in terms of autoplay, is that the majority of those Protect and Shell removal skills do tend to be single target based. So if you are running her alongside a tank, I think that, that would be the way to get the maximum benefit of this skill. Now her second buff is going to be a party buff. This one is going to provide a 30% damage absorption effect to both herself and her allies. And it's also going to provide a 40% attack buff and a re-raise removal skill that's just going to be passively on her for 3 turns. Very cool buff here. This is going to help her bruise a bit more with that HP sustain. And then any and all of her attacks are going to have that re-raise removal skill. And that's going to further position her to be a nice counter to someone like Dark Fina, or even the Light Element as well, who does have a number of re-raise units like Locke, and of course the new Light Stern that was just unveiled on the Japanese side as well. Alright guys, so moving on to her attacks here next, and her low AP finisher skill is going to be a range 4, range height 1. It's going to come in with that standard low 121% mod. It has just a single effect on it, and it's going to restore 8 AP back to Lisol on a kill shot. So this one is very similar to the Samurai's Heian skill, and if you manage to finish someone off with this one, it's going to effectively make this one cost 5 AP, before we even get into any of the AP reductions that she may have as well. So very, very nice here. Now skill number 2 here is going to get a range of 4 on the cross AoE, has a range height of 1 with another added in there on the Air of Effect. And we're going to have a medium 165 mod, and prior to the damage, this one is going to shut off enemy counter abilities for 3 turns. And post-damage, it's going to absorb 30% of the damage done, while also at the same time reducing the enemy's healing power by 40. So I do really like the flavor of this skill where you're kind of sapping away the opponent's healing power and then kind of adding it back to herself in a way. And yes, this one does stack with her passive buff there that we were just looking at. So if she does manage to hit a couple of units with a skill and she has that buff online, it's not out of the question to expect a full heal back, on that particular skill. Now her third ability here is a range of 3 with a range height of 1, has a medium 165 mod, and this one, similar to Amnelis, is going to allow you to select up to 2 targets, and those can be in front of her, they can be behind her, or etc. It's also going to debuff their slash resistance by 25% prior to that damage coming in. So super nice skill here. I think a lot of you out there might be familiar with the skill Braver from Cloud. Well, this one is even better, as the debuff value here is the same, but the mod is going to be quite a bit higher. And again, despite being able to hit multiple targets, it is going to be checked against their single target resistance instead, which actually can be quite advantageous, as so many units have been able to kind of stack up a very high area resistance these days in the game. All right, her fourth skill here is going to be a range 3 with a range height of 1. We do have a large 200% 50% mod, and this one is going to break physical barriers before the damage comes in, and then it's going to apply a one-hit 50% all damage barrier to herself. And as we mentioned, at level 140, it will also have a dispel there on top, after the damage comes in. So really nice ability here as well. Again, we're going to have that flavor here of kind of stealing the opponent's barrier and then applying it to herself, which I really love. Barriers are a quite common method of survivability out there, so definitely a key piece of utility to have in your kit to be able to break those. And then of course slapping the barrier back onto herself is going to add to her mid-fight sustain and kind of survivability there as well. And she does get 3 uses of this skill here too, so that barrier is feasibly something that you might be able to reapply to yourself, a couple of times over the course of a battle. Alright, last up is going to be her Limit Burst here, and it's going to be coming in with that large diamond area of effect, topping out at that range of 5. It's going to have that standard 200% LB mod, and post damage we're going to have 2 effects on this one. The first is going to be a 67% chance to blind her foes, and that's going to be with a 50% accuracy reduction. And just a quick recap on how blind works. If that particular unit you hit had a 400% accuracy rating, that's going to cut it right in half to 200%. It's not a flat reduction, so definitely keep that in mind. So the blind effect here, this will have her working kind of similar to Bold Leela in that Lisol here is kind of naturally evasive. So if you leaned into that aspect a bit, it is not out of the question here that she's going to be able to dodge, very well once this blind effect is applied. Now the second effect that this one has is conditional, and that's if the blind lands, their defense penetration is going to be reduced by 30%. Now the defense pen reduction here, may not have a huge impact on Lysol's survivability in particular, just because she doesn't really have any innate defense there to speak of. But, it could be pretty valuable, if you were running her along someone like Joom or another high defense tank, or even someone like Sadali, who does have a respectable amount of defense there as well. So really cool kit here, the skills I'd say really flow together and work nicely for this unit with kind of that self-healing and survivability angle that she kind of has within that mid-fight, where she's kind of attacking things actively and then kind of adding on to her survivability as the fight wears on. Alright guys, let's look quickly at her sub-jobs here next. Her main sub-job is going to come along with 2 skills. The first one is going to be a TP-based ailment infliction skill, and it's going to have a 25% chance to inflict 3 different ailments, which is going to be poison, paralyze, and immobilize. And if one of them lands, the target's accuracy is going to be debuffed by 50. I do kind of like this one, more so for manual play. I can't really imagine a scenario where the AI would use this skill as, it just has that one range. And of course, she's going to be in auto attack distance, at that point. I'm not sure that I would go full on 97 faith with this unit, but, maybe someone that I could see running a 70 to 75 faith to kind of up the chances of her LB. And then, if you were using this sub job, it would up her chances here as well. Now the second skill she gets here, also going to be a range 1 skill, but she is able to target all around herself with this one. It's coming in with that medium 165 mod, and post damage is going to give a 20% agility reduction. This one's an okay skill, but again, probably more so for manual usage. As again, I don't see the AI turning to this skill because within the main kit there, she does have skills with an equal modifier that actually do cost less AP for her. Now in terms of the sub-jobs here, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them, as she's getting Lancer and Monk, both fairly old and outdated jobs. They do have some enhancements that are coming in for them, which, even with those, they're still not all that amazing by today's standards. They do, however, kind of give some flexibility to this unit in a couple of different ways. For example, with Lancer, that would allow you to run her along someone like Flagbearer Glassy or even Winter Luartha and kind of chain up with them, in that scenario. Alternatively, the Monk sub-job, I think, is going to be there to pair her alongside Tifa, who very early on is going to get that 140 Awakening, or in the future from Edward Elric, who is going to be a free unit that's coming in with the Full Metal Alchemist collaboration, all of which I think could pair very nicely, alongside this unit. Out of the 3 jobs here though, I do actually like the Monk sub job the best. For a couple of reasons. The first one is going to be that store ability. Definitely an insane buff for that 150% attack. And then it gets that enhancement there, which is going to add 40 defense penetration onto it as well. A great buff to use as you're kind of approaching the enemy. It is something the AI will use as well, if they kind of calculate that they are going to be in range to attack on their next turn. Of course, this one's even better for manual play if you kind of line this up with a Quicken and then are able to do kind of big damage there on your next turn. The other really cool thing with this job is going to be the chakra ability, which, I really love this one after the monk job gets its enhancements. And I do think it's one of the best and most unique skills that the job has to offer. And this one restores a flat 40% HP to the targets, and then it's going to tack on a regen effect there on top of it. So this one is great for manual or autoplay alike. And for auto in particular, I think that this could potentially allow you to run without a healer. You could actually maybe use her to heal up your tank there for a second strike, which could be very effective, especially because you are getting that regen there on top. And then, of course, if you're able to follow that up and then buff that damage absorption there on the next turn, that's going to make her a pretty accomplished little self-healer here, and I'd say a big feather in the cap of this unit in my view. All right, so the week following Lysol's release, there's going to be a new job-based vision card that will debut in the game. This one is going to be effective for greatsword, dagger, and mace jobs. Decent enough base stats coming in on this one. I always like to see that flat agility there in the base stats. The bestowed is okay. She's going to pick up another 5 area resist. The party effect, though, is I think the best thing about this card. It's going to get 24 slash resist, 25 accuracy, and then 40% attack. So I really do like that combination of effects there, especially for an evade hunting party. Now, looking at who's able to use the card here, I'd say Wind is definitely benefiting the most here. They definitely have the most units who are able to use it. And I'd say quite a few good ones there too, including Sodali and Jum, both very strong 100 cost units. And a mono Wind party, assuming you have the Culmination Vision card, they do have the card efficiency there to be able to main slot a card like this one too, which is very nice. If you think about branching out to some other elements though with this card, and who Lisol and Winds, might be able to be paired with best in terms of elemental synergy, well, first and foremost, that's going to be the complementary elements in fire and lightning. In terms of fire units here specifically, not a great selection, I'd say. Probably the best one there is going to be Regalia Glaciella. And of course, she definitely wouldn't mind that slash resistance or accuracy. I think for that connection though, we will be waiting out maybe some more job cards, or maybe even some more units coming into fire that could utilize this vision card. I think there may be some better combinations here, in terms of this card. If you were going to be pairing lightning and wind together though, maybe throw Esther and Lisol there together alongside Sodali. Certainly though, there are some nice physical bruiser units on the list here from dark or ice, so could be useful for some of those parties there as well. I think if you were planning on going for Lisol here, you definitely want to grab this card. It's going to work great as a win card today, and then you can perhaps branch out with some more options there in the future. It's going to be a great evade hunting card there with that high accuracy. And then the majority of evade units out there today are slash based as well, so having that nice resistance there kind of built into the card, it definitely makes this very effective for that reason. All right, so we are going to have a new piece of equipment that's going to be coming in alongside Lisol. It's a really awesome looking new dagger. I wasn't sure exactly on the translation, so I kind of improvised a little bit on this one, and I thought Unholy Blade would kind of fit. And it does have a nice ring to it, so, there it is. And I'm going to be highlighting the Assault version here today. She's going to get that 173 attack with that version, and still it's going to retain a decent 7 accuracy. I think this is going to be the best way to go for this item. The other build options really aren't all that compelling. The AIM version there, for example, is just coming in with a base 15 accuracy, which isn't really all that high. For passives, we're going to have that unconditional 20% slash res penetration, so it's going to be our first slash res pen dagger, so that's very cool already. The conditional passives on this one are going to be for the majority, if not all, the dagger classes in the game, and that's even going to include Locke, Joker, and Bold Leela's unique jobs. And that's really the surprising part here, as most of these weapons that have been coming out have been sort of conditional to smaller groups or even to specific units. So this weapon here, I think, instantly becomes a best in slot weapon, not only for Lisol, but, pretty much all of the units that are able to wield it. And I think it does represent a pretty nice buff for those older units with that 15% AP consumption reduction. And then, of course, that 10 area resistance there on top, which, is a stat that has been very hard to find, specifically on cloth-wearing units. So I do plan to farm 2, if not 3 of these items. It's a really, really nice one. And I do love it, when we kind of get these items that can kind of give some enhanced value or kind of bring up some older units that have come out in the past. All right, flashing over to our timeline now for 2023. Here on Global, we have just begun our collaboration with Dragon Quest Tact. For the next 6 to 8 weeks, though, things that we're aware of are somewhat slim. At the moment, we are aware of Perine and Rurugia, which are going to be coming with that Another Story Crystal Warriors event, as well as the collaboration with Addison Rae. So I do think that has us primed for perhaps another GL Fest, or even maybe just a GL exclusive unit as we kind of lead up to the 3rd year anniversary there in late March. That being said, that 3rd anniversary is going to be chock full of new units. That 6-week span there is quite insane, with 5 new 100 cost and 3 new 90 cost gacha units. Of course, Edward there is going to be the free get, and that is really cool. But that is just a barrage of new units there, and you're definitely going to be wanting to save for that period if you are interested, especially in multiple of those units. Now, that does raise some doubt, on the units that are kind of leading up to that 3rd year time frame before reincarnation comes in. Thankfully, we have at least seen that Perone and Rurugia do quickly get their 140 awakenings, so I think if you were interested in either of those units, they will be well worth that investment, and you will be able to use them quickly into that 140 era. I will say though that for early 2023, it is just a bit concerning that we are seeing continued support and developments which heavily dominated 2022, namely in Dark, Wind, and Lightning. However, I'd say there is a glimmer of change here, as we do have 2 Water, Fire, and Earth units as well, so that is very encouraging to see. All 3 elements there were woefully underrepresented in 2022. Still though, despite that, we've yet to see a new 100 cost fire unit, so I am expecting to see that sometime soon as well. In terms of wins specifically here though, if you were interested in grabbing Lisol, you will have that potential partner in Edward, as we talked about, and I do think that they are going to pair pretty well together, as Edward is also a pretty adept evade hunting unit himself. He does several 100% hit abilities in his kit. Alright guys, so here is a mock build that I put together, and today we're going to have yet another option to try and take down Yuffie and friends, and this time is going to be, of course, a wind variant. So I'm going to be pairing Lisol here with Sottily and Jum, though I think that either of those units could be replaced by Flagbearer Glaciella. Now the Fire Evade trio, they don't really have all that much slash resist penetration, at least before they're getting their buffs online. So I'd say our heavy slash resist and area resist here in the builds, and then active mitigation buffs coming in for Sottily. We should have quite enough bulk here to be able to take on the initial onslaught from that fire team. And that's going to allow us to retaliate and then start taking them down very quickly. So for equipment here, I'm going to be using that all new dagger. Alongside that, it's going to be the +6 Alex ring. And then we have Ziz's bells here, not for the AP restore, but for the high accuracy and agility there in the TMR slot. Now for an Esper, we're once again going to be using Odin for his combination of high agility, accuracy, and slash resist. For the vision cards, the trifecta setup for agility, area resist, and single target resist is covered with just 2 vision cards for wins, and that's with Culmination and Dark Tetra. So we do have room here to fit in that new job-based vision card that we looked at, and I did want to highlight that card in the build today, and it's another reason that I have actually decided to use Sottily here, because he can actually take good effect from that card. And I do actually have him built out pretty accurate here. He's going to be just over 400%, and that will have him, missing from time to time if RNG isn't in your favor. Now to bump up my accuracy here even further in the secondary slots, I am going to be using that Near Automata card for the luck, and then the Typhon card there as well for the accuracy that it brings. Now for Trust Stones here, for my defensive set, I'm going to be using a combination of Slash and Fire Resist in slot 1, my standard HP and Luck Stone in slot 2, and then in slot 3, I have some Crit Evade and Agility debuff resistance. Now for an accuracy focused build, normally I would opt for a Luck set here, but in Lisol's case, she's so innately accurate that I'm comfortable with where we're at and had room to drop it here for an HP set just to get her a bit more bulk and elemental resistance. Now notably here, I am not using blind resist. Lisol does have that innate blind resist already, and then Odin is even adding on top of that, so no need for that here, particularly for this unit. Now moving over to the offensive Trust Stone set there on the right, I'm going to have my standard utility stone in slot 1 for the acquired AP and dexterity. In my second stone, I have attack and defense penetration. And then on the third stone, I'm going to bring some wind attack and healing power. And I'm going to be tying all of those into an accuracy set there for the 15 bonus in accuracy that one brings. Now in the stats, you can see we're at a very strong 439 accuracy, so she's not really going to struggle at all, in terms of hitting those fire evade units. Now with a unit like Lisol, in lieu of that HP set, you could opt for a defense or spirit set to kind of maximize her healing power, and that could be another very nice option. It would make those damage absorption skills and even her chakra ability kind of even a bit more potent, so I do kind of like that for a build as well. Now as always, if you do want to take a closer look at the finer details here in the build, I will put a link to that in the description there below. So what is my verdict today on Lisol? For my pros, this is definitely a bruiser type unit, not in the traditional sense, in terms of defense and spirit values, but she's actually accomplishing this via a combination of various tools, including protect and shell, high area resistance, and then of course that mid-fight sustain, which she has through HP drains and barrier stealing abilities. She can provide some decent support to the party as well, whether it's from an evade standpoint with that blind effect on her limit burst, or just in general with access to dispel and barrier breaks, counter block, or re-raise removal. On top of this, she does have access to 3 different damage types in slash, strike, and pierce, which gives her some versatility, not only in targeting different units' weaknesses, but also in the units that she's able to work alongside and chain up together. Lisol is also coming in as one of the most accurate units in the game, and she's going to have no issues whatsoever, even taking on the most evasive units out there, assuming she is built correctly. Now, on the more negative side, we are looking at a unit that is lacking completely when it comes to defense and spirit, meaning if units are able to get her around her area resist and single her out, she is much less survivable. And if that were to happen, we are also looking at a unit who doesn't have anything further to kind of bail her out, no reflex, no courage, and no re-raise innately. Lisol is also very much lacking when it comes to her slash resist penetration. She's coming in with 0 innate, which I'd say is pretty rough for a 100 cost unit, and it definitely will be a problem for her, if she goes against very tanky slash resistant enemies. She does have that in peril though, and access to the different damage types, which will definitely help her out there. The problem there though is that those jobs are just a bit outdated and kind of lacking in some of the utility, especially that those damaging skills bring. This unit is hampered, just a bit when it comes to range as well, as, outside of her limit burst, she's primarily going to be limited to a 3 to 4 tile range, and with most of those abilities actually being just a range height of 1 on top of it. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue for her though. She does have that mobility passive that she can use that can kind of help get her some more effective range. Kind of summing everything up here, I think despite these flaws here that I've mentioned, I think that she's a very strong unit for what she's designed to do. However, she is just coming into a wind element, which at this point I'd say isn't really lacking all that much, when it comes especially to evade hunting or even bruising, with perhaps one of the best units in the game for that purpose in Flagbearer Glaciella already existing today. And she can actually do quite well, even despite not having a 140 awakening just yet. So, in my view, Lisol is going to provide another option, either to be used alongside Glaciella, or perhaps instead of her, maybe if you've not had a chance to build her up in the past. So that's my review today, guys. That is Lisol. Stunning artwork for her here, as always, so props to the WoTV art team. I do really like this unit. I think she's an amazing evade hunter. And evade as a playstyle in general, I'd say tends to come out a bit more often in those blind PvP situations, things like class match or even limited guild war. So I do think that she could be a very effective unit, particularly in those arenas. On top of that, I think she does have that nice build versatility. I think she's very well set up to handle dark teams and light teams as well. I am just a bit concerned about that slash res penetration issue that we talked about. I think that it does tend to be a little bit problematic, especially if you're targeting teams which rely heavily on stacked bruisers or tanks. I do wonder if Gumi might look at addressing that with maybe a limited bestowed on her vision card. I guess we'll see, once it comes out. I'll definitely be pulling for this unit either way, just because I love that HP absorb mechanic in general. I love that she can also give that to the team. And I think that she's going to be an excellent manual play unit. For the general player base though, I think it might be a little bit of a tougher sell, just considering that she's shaping up to be a bit more of a luxury unit, especially if you've built up Glaciella already. But, even more than that, it's going to be with the unfortunate timing that she's going to be released, where she's smack in the middle of Sephiroth and Amnilis, and then the Full Metal Alchemist collaboration directly after her. So I think a lot of players are going to be a bit more excited about getting their hands on those units. So that said, I'm going to put it over to you guys now. How are you actually feeling about this unit? What do you think about that timing situation, especially that we were just talking about? Are you going to try to pull for her when she's released, or maybe hope for a rerun banner down the road and grab her later? Definitely let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video today, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.